Good afternoon. If I can get my eyes off of that shiny thing, I might be able to look at the rest of you. But thank you for having me. Carol asked me to talk to you about commercial development mostly, and to try and factor in on neighborhood commercial. Before I get started, though, what I'd like to do is set this in terms of a larger context of economic development, because commercial development now is very much part of the larger economic context. So I have no idea how to get rid of that box, but I'll help you. Thank you. For many years now, we have been looking at and starting to look at things that are city-oriented and urban. For a long time, we let our cities go. For a long time, we spread out into the suburbs, but we've got a lot of programs now. Just about every state in the U.S. talks about smart growth, or has some sort of regulation that talks about smart growth, or inner city growth, or inner city development. So there certainly is a move back to the cities. Some cities are doing much better than others. It's the pesky box. So urban is becoming increasingly important in terms of what we do. Global factors. We are no longer an isolated, not that we ever really were, but we can't be an isolated society anymore. Global factors are at play regardless. You look at outsourcing, you look at wage rates in other places, things such as currency, ISO 9002, all of these things affect what we do in the US. And for us to be competitive here, we're going to have to look at things such as global markets. So globalization is just happening. It's just part of the process. Because of that, education is becoming increasingly important. We cannot compete on low-wage jobs. We cannot compete on jobs that are easier to place in India or in China. The minimum wage in the U.S., approximately $6 an hour. In India, it's $1 a month. So when you look at it in that context, we need to be an educated workforce. The entry level into a machine shop now is an associate's degree. Okay? So we can't talk about economic development without talking about education. It's become so important that even in our plans, even in our economic development plans, we say education. Talk about education. The scores, the state scores on education affect housing markets, affect where people want to locate. Okay? So I can't stress the importance of education enough. What's our competitive advantage? Our competitive advantage is research and development. Our competitive advantage is the creative economy. Our competitive advantage is innovation. Okay? No longer can we survive on things that are just mundane or things that are basically geographically tied. We are geographically free. If you call an 800 number for Delta Airlines, your phone is being picked up in India. You send a mailing to Aetna Insurance Corporation for your payment, it's being received. That's actually an interesting story. The Aetna address is a P.O. box number, and the P.O. box number is Lufthansa hold. It goes directly into a plane that flies over to Ireland. Right? So all of this makes it important to say that we can do business just about anywhere, which brings back the point about why do we need good places? Why are we concerned with amenities? Right? Because you could be situated anywhere now doing any kind of work. Oh, where did I go? See, I'm playing with this already. Focuses on research, creativity, and networks. Quality of life. 20 years ago, we wouldn't be talking about quality of life or the environment if we were talking about economic development. 20 years ago, that would probably be at the opposite spectrum of what it is that we're trying to do. Okay? Again, today, we can't talk about economic development if we're not talking about education. not talking about the environment, not talking about an amenity-rich climate, not talking about quality life. All of this is getting tied together. A good place to be also needs to be a good place for business. There are a lot of programs, and I don't want to target any, but it's not enough to be cool. It's not enough just to have a place that's got the coffee shops and the nice programs and all the rest of it. It's important to be cool not just for the people, but also for the businesses. What's cool for business is different. Business needs infrastructure. Business needs networks. Business needs access to research. Business needs access to capital. Okay? So when we talk about a smart place or a cool place or quality of life issues, we want to make sure we're targeting both the population as well as the businesses that are in there. Role of human and social capital. Business are following the workers. Right? Now it's all about where people want to live. It's the human capital that's important. It's the social capital that's important. And good places to be, good neighborhoods to live in, good housing are all parts of that mix. Understanding the demographics. We are increasingly an aging society. The largest cohort in the US Census to change was people over the age of 85. We're calling them the old. It's not even 65 anymore. Right? And what are we doing for that? How do we address those problems? Those are issues that we need to face and we need to address as planners. We are an aging society. We're all growing older. Right? The browning of America, immigration, the rise of Hispanics, the rise of other cultures. Okay? Very soon it's expected that they will be the dominant culture or the dominant race in the US. It's not going to be white dominated. And what are we doing to plan for that? They're already in our mix. That's not trying to plan for the future. That's trying to plan for what we already have. Right? And how do we deal with that in a society which is going to be highly educated, highly research oriented? How do we move the rest of us along in this continuum? Paradox of growth and success. Yeah, we're talking about higher paying jobs. We're talking about innovation and research and all those nice fancy things. What goes with that? What's the flip side to that? The higher your incomes, the better off people are, the more R&D we bring in. The flip side of it is these people need services. Okay? So we are actually, by default, creating some sort of a class structure here. If you look at cities like New York, you look at cities like Chicago, there's a rise of homeless population. Basically, you've got all of these people that need the high attainable jobs that need services. You need the janitors, and you need the cooks, and you need the service industry, and McDonald's is always going to be here whether we like it or not. Okay? So what are we doing in terms of planning? How are we integrating that part of it into our regular culture, into our regular things? We don't even call housing affordable housing anymore. We call it attainable housing. It's not being affordable. It's not the poor folk coming from the city. It's your teachers, your firefighters, your police officers. Those are the people that need and can't afford the housing in communities. Okay? So we're almost changing that whole term into being something that's attainable instead of the $1 million homes. And again, as I said, just cool is not enough. We want to be smart about it. And that's kind of a little bit of a pet peeve of mine. I shall let you know that right away. All right. So setting the stage, setting the larger context in terms of what we are, what we do, and what planning is, that gives us a chance to now zero in and say, okay, what makes a place smart, or what makes a place cool, or what makes a place different from anywhere USA? All right. And a lot of times, it's that special character. It's the retail mix. It's the commercial mix. It's the neighborhood with the nice houses. Not nice meaning not $1 million houses, not many mansions, but attainable, good housing. It's all it's every time. No, I totally lost my train of thought. Isn't that funny? Okay, so being in a global economy means that we need to make every place special, or every place, we have to try to do the amenities part of it, right? Businesses, people are not just looking for cheap space, they're looking for space with amenities, and they're willing to pay for state-of-the-art stuff. To go into just some basic national retail trends, know your customers in terms of what we do. Sears has 101 million customers in its database. Every time you go to a Radio Shack and you want to pay your bill, they ask you for your phone number. So you give them some phony phone number. But every time you fill out one of those store credit card forms, every time you fill out any of that stuff, anytime you pay with a credit card, anytime you pay with a credit card, your information is tracked back to your zip code. Okay? And this information is actually available from commercial sources for not that much money. We can go to something like CACI or Demographics on Call and ask them for what is the supply and demand within this geographic area, within this zip code. And they'll tell you what people in this zip code are spending money on. They've got it. Okay. So it's not playing in the dark anymore. That information is available, and readily available, rather. And so to know who your customer is and know who you serve is important, because that's going to dictate what it is that you do. The mall. The big American mall, number of trips have declined by 50%. Okay? It's more shop-attainment than it is just the mall. It's more of the open lifestyle malls that are becoming popular. Right? So the whole idea of everybody moving to the mall is not really happening either. Challenging category killers. A category killer is something, it's a big box retailer. A category killer is something like Walmart or Toys R Us or something of that sort. Home Depot. Right? And the only competition they're going to get is through other large people. Malls, downtowns, neighborhoods, none of us are even bothering to compete with that. Okay? Category killers are the large retailers, the large thing where you've got economies of scale. You've got economies of scale that play into it, and that's the only thing that's affecting them. Precision shopping, quick shopping trips. That's what we can tie into, especially when it comes to downtowns or neighborhood commercial areas. Okay, what's convenient? What's easy to get at? Right? So convenience is important. If you see a lot of large stores now are moving from things such as malls into downtowns. Look at Borders, it's moving back. Talbot's is moving into downtowns. The Gap is moving into downtowns. And they're all going after the small store format, because people seem to like that a lot better than mass sale, especially for specialty items. Okay? Yeah, if you want to buy toilet paper, you're going to go to Walmart and spend the money at Walmart. But if you want to buy a dress or a good tie, you probably don't want to go to Walmart. Okay? Entertaining the customer. The whole entertainmentization of shopping, the shoppertainment pattern, is catching on and growing and becoming more and more so. But look at what they're doing. They're trying to create a neighborhood downtown kind of a feel. They've got sidewalks, and they've got lights, and they've got parking, yes, which is a convenience. But they're trying to create the ambiance more of a downtown feel, right? With cinemas and restaurants and all the rest of it. Globalization of trade. Out of the top 100, at least 90 have international operations. Okay? You go to Italy and you can see a Payless shoes there. Right? You come here, you can see Benetton here. It doesn't matter where you are. The chain shopping continues, and that's keeping on growing larger. E-commerce. How much do we do on the internet? Just like catalog sales. How much of us do our Christmas shopping through catalogs now? rather than fighting the rush and going to the stores. The sales are just as large. All of that is just as happening. Kids in retail trade. Seems like 26% of teens in the USA have access to a credit card. That's disgusting. Yeah. There actually is a downturn in school sports programs and after-school programs and things such as that. And the reasoning for that is that teens and kids now in schools are not that much interested in sports. They want a job after school. They want to work so that they can go buy that boombox or they can go buy that car. Right? So the whole society around us is changing. The emphasis is not so much on education in school, even for the teenagers. They're into working, shopping, and entertaining themselves. These are some of the statistics from the National Retailers Association. Simplification of what are the keys that they found in terms of why people shop and how they shop. Simplification of shopping. Convenience is the key. Okay? They want something that 61% of everybody interviewed or everybody asked in this survey said convenience was important. Now, when you talk about convenience, it's not just that the shop is down the road, but it is that the shop is open when you need it to be open, that the shop has enough parking, that the shop is accessible, and all of those things come into play. Right? So when you look at convenience, it's not just from a geographic standpoint, not just from a proximity standpoint, but overall. Price, 41% still say price is important. Right? Selection, 33%. What does this tell you? If it's something that's not important, when selection is not important, when it's a mass product that you're looking for, convenience and price matters. Okay? Simpler shopping, not less choice. People don't want less choice, they just want it to be easier to do. 50% of the customers now shop at a supercenter, up from 32%. 56% shop at dollar stores. 30% shop on the internet, up from only 10% in 2000. Right? So these are the trends in terms of national things. Retail experience, appearance and cleanliness. 58% said they would go back to some place that looked good, that was clean, safe. Convenience, again, 57%. A good place to spend time browsing. Okay? Walking around, looking at different stores, looking what's there. And attracts customers I feel comfortable around. What's your clientele? Who's hanging around those stores? Right? These are things that affect people. These are trends that people look at when they're talking about this. Am I doing something that's causing that? Should I not be doing something? All right. So let's talk about main streets. Let's talk about neighborhood commercial, given the trends that we are seeing, and they are differing. There are many trends that are at stake here. Firstly, knowing your strengths and weaknesses. It's a logical process. This is not rocket science. Okay? This is a logical process. Go with your gut. Think of what you would like when you were shopping in an environment that you would feel safe in and try and cater to that. So know your strengths and weaknesses. Strengths and weaknesses in terms of space, in terms of access, in terms of customer base, who's in the neighborhood, all of those factors. You need to do a good environmental assessment of the area to be able to gain what you're doing. Assess opportunities and threats. The first thing anybody would do in any planning process is a SWOT. A SWOT is strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. Okay, that gives you the basis from which you can then move on and continue to say, okay, what are the things that we want to actually target and go about? Involve a broad cross-section of community. That's important. Getting diverse views and getting those up front is important. Right? What is necessarily good for the owner of a building might not be the best thing for the person who's renting. If something is good for the merchant association, it might not be exactly what the residents want. Okay? So trying to get those diverse views up, trying to get people to talk to each other is increasingly important. Brainstorming new and innovative ideas. Yeah, no, and how many ideas come out of public meetings or out of just discussion groups, brainstorming, talking to people? Okay? And there is no right or wrong way about doing this, so get the ideas up front, try them. You know? Creating an action strategy with benchmarks and performance measures. How do you know you're doing a good job? How do you know something that you've spent money on is actually working? Okay? So an evaluation criteria or some sort of benchmarks is important. We talk about creating a 90-day agenda. Basically, that's to say that if you make this grand plan and nothing happens, the players change, the key people involved change, new things come in, the plan gets forgotten, it gets shelved. Or even if people are really interested in it, if they see no movement, they feel it's been a waste of time. You know, we spent these 6 months, we came up with this plan, and look here, 4 months later, it's the same thing, nothing has happened. Right? So from a psychological, from a motivational factor, you want to create an immediate agenda, a 90-day agenda. As soon as this plan is complete, what are the things that you can do in the first 3 months once this plan is complete? And they don't have to be big items. They can't be big items. Things that are low cost, easy to do, clean up, window dressing, all those kinds of things that come out in your SWOT. The easy things pick up and start to do right away. Report consistently on progress. That's the other part of the 90-day agenda, is let people know what's happening. Talk about your successes. Okay? Let people know that it's actually moving and celebrate the successes. Invite people. All right, basic principles. I'm not even sure why I put these in here other than to form some sort of framework. Comprehensive approach. Okay, don't look at things in their insular way. If your problem is parking, don't look at just parking without looking at the road connections, the streets, how it impacts the neighborhoods. Okay? If your issue is crime, just don't try and deal with that. Try and focus on what's causing it. What are the elements that are causing those things? So a comprehensive approach. The incremental goes back to your 90-day agenda. Small steps are important. Don't just wait for the big thing to come around. Don't just wait for the massive project to come around that's going to turn the whole thing over. Start showing progress with small things. Incremental changes are important. Incremental changes is what's going to get momentum behind what it is that you're doing. Okay? Understanding the importance of self-sufficiency and interdependence. Everything is related. Okay? What's the market? What are we trying to do in this neighborhood or in this area? Right? So the understanding of what goes well with what. Understanding the need to build public-private partnerships. Everybody's talking about public-private partnerships. You can't do anything anymore without public-private partnerships. Okay? Need to identify and capitalize on current assets. What are you building around? What's different about your area that's not there in some other place? Okay. What are the assets? Is there a river? Is there a beautiful park? Did somebody famous live there? Build on something. Build on some existing assets. Appreciate quality. You start with dollar stores and you'll end with dollar stores. If you want an uptick in the market, you need to provide the incentives and the environment that is going to give you an uptick in the market. A positive image and attitude towards Main Street. A lot of our main streets, a lot of our downtowns have this perception that we're not doing well, we're rotting, all the stores are gone, we have to go to the mall. That's by celebrating the success. Tell the story. Start changing perception. Start changing people's feelings around. And revitalization strategies need to be action-oriented. Again, use it as a verb. Okay? Let's not just say we're a cool downtown. Let's say what is cool about this? What makes us cool? What is the action strategy involved in that? How do you create a more creative workshop? How do you bring in more people into downtown? Okay. These are some of the things that we want to think of and consider when we are doing. And I'm going to focus a little bit on Main Street because it's not that different in terms of whether it's a downtown or it's a neighborhood. And then I'll go into what makes it different for a neighborhood level street. All of us have this picture of the 1960s in our minds when all these downtowns were great and full and you had movie theaters and all the rest of it. How many of you saw Back to the Future, the movie? All right. Think of it that way. You know, downtown in the 1960s, or downtown in that movie, all right, in the beginning, is this beautiful, you know, there's this woman with a strolling carriage, there's a petrol pump, you know, people are coming out and changing your tires, it's all service, it's all happening. Flash into the future, what is it? It's a derelict movie hall. There's a drunk sitting on the bench. It's all dark. Okay? Well, we're somewhere between there. We're not the downtown of the 1960s. We never will be the downtown of the 1960s. Okay? And we certainly don't want to get to the derelict either. So we are different. We are different. We can't compete with the malls. We can't compete with the category busters, and we need to be different. Mobility dictates buying. If you have a lot of money and can drive, you're going to go someplace different than if you need to walk. Okay. The amount of parking that you see is going to dictate whether you drive your car or whether you bike. Okay. Where you go, how you shop is dictated by mobility. Shoppers demand security. Any of us, whoever we are. If you don't feel secure going to a place, you're not going to go there. Right? And it's not just a question of whether there's real crime or not. It is even the perception of crime. I worked in downtown Middletown, Connecticut. 8 years ago, there was a murder on Main Street by some homeless guy who killed an 8-year-old kid. And this was during a festival, a food festival or something of that sort downtown. 8 years later, every time you say, you know, well, why don't you do festivals? Why don't you? Oh, no, we can't do that. So it's the collective memory. It was a one-time incident. Yes, it was gross. It was a one-time incident that happened 8 years ago, but it's like it happened yesterday. Okay? So even the perception of crime, or this perception of not being safe, comes to play in this. Shoppers decide to have a pleasing experience. You know, yeah, I'm walking down the street very happy, and I see an unemployment office. That makes me even happier. You know, what do I see? I see a soup kitchen. Those things aren't things that you want on your main street. For somebody to go out and spend money and buy something, they need to feel nice. Okay? And impulse buying. Impulse buying. Yeah, how often have you walked down the road and said, oh, I'll go in and buy some home insurance today? You know. So those are the things that you have to factor in. A person's psyche. If you're going to spend money on something, if you're going to go out and buy some flowers or a T-shirt, you want to feel good about doing that. You don't want to feel guilty about doing that. Okay? So service uses on your main street, although they're important, they ought not to be on your main retail drag. Okay? Because of perception issues. Uniqueness, specialty, and cachet. Again, we're not competing with the mall. We're not competing with the Walmarts. What we need in our neighborhood stores, in our downtowns, are those things that are special. Okay? We'll go to the special store that's doing your handmade chocolates or wrapping chocolates. You're not going to go there for CVS anymore. So building on specialty and cachet and uniqueness is important. I should remember how I do this. Okay. Main Street needs sharp edges. This is a hard one because we talk about, you know, creating more and more shopping areas. We talk about creating more Main Street type shopping. Part of what we need to understand is that there is only a limited amount of money that people can spend. Okay? So by creating more, you're not necessarily going to get more money. You're just spreading it out. Right? So downtowns having sharp edges, defined edges to stop the dribbling effect. You have more of a sense of what your retail corridor is. You have more of a sense of what your downtown market is or what your neighborhood market is. Okay? Don't start off with the little commercial on the side that continues to grow because it's easier to park or it's easier to keep it. Keep it contained. Okay? So stop the dribbling effect. A retail rhythm. Again, as I mentioned before, you need shops that want you. You go for a nice dinner, or you come out of a movie theater and you want to go home. Yeah, if there's a good wine store, you're going to buy some wine, buy some flowers. That's the retail rhythm. You want to make people feel like they need to shop. Okay? And for things that are not, it's impulse buying. It's impulse shopping. If they had a big grocery list, they'd go to Myers. If they were doing their 1 month's shopping, they'd go to some place where they would get some sort of price relief. Yeah? So that's not what we're talking about. We're talking about creating someplace special, creating something special. Retail competition is healthy. Why do we go to the malls? If I want to buy a pair of shoes, why would I rather go to the mall than to my little corner shoe store?
More variety?
More variety. I know that if I can't find it in this shop, I have 2 other shoe stores that I can look at. And if I have a limited time frame, okay, I can quickly run to the mall, I can park, I can go in, and I have 3 shoe stores right there. Okay? So building on complementary retail, building on things that afford you to have more of a choice in terms of what you're doing. Must coordinate hours of operation. You know how often I have walked down a main street at 6 o'clock and tried to open doors and not found them open? If you go to the mall, you can be rest assured they're going to stay open till they say they're open. Okay? How often do you go in and you know, somebody's in the store, you just drove up that drive and it's just like 6 o'clock and they pretend they can't see you. Now put yourself in the person, in the consumer's place. Is it worth my trouble trying to go to the store that I really like downtown if I know I'm going to be barely on time? No. No. But what makes that store special? What would make you want to go to that store?
They want to serve you.
They want it to serve you. You know, yeah, say 6 o'clock is your closing time. Close at 6:10. What difference? If you see somebody pulling in, if it's something that they want quickly, let them get it. Okay, so it's the service part. It's making it easy, it's making it serviceable that makes a difference. One of our biggest concerns, merchants and owners on Main Street have different needs. Okay? People that own the buildings, if I'm 65, retired, I have a building on Main Street, I've had this for many, many years. What do I want to do? I want to retire in Florida. I want to just take the income, sit by the pool, relax. If I'm the 30-year-old who's just investing and starting my new shop, what do I want? I want you to invest in the property. I want this to be the best shop I've ever had. This is my first shop. Okay. So there's a total disconnect. There's a disconnect between needs of older owners of buildings, and this happens especially in older downtowns, and tenants or renters. Right? And there really is no easy solution. It's like, what do you do? The best way we've found is really getting some peers together, getting some guys that are not that old or part of the same cycle to go down and talk to the person in Florida and say, look, we're doing really, really well here. If you revitalize, you're going to get more money for your store. You can ask for more rent. Okay? It's a negotiation game. It's a network game. But there's a definite disconnect there that we need to know and be aware of. Okay, now it doesn't want to do anything for me. Okay, it is not all about the car. You go to European downtowns, you go to some of the older downtowns in the US, you go to places that are people-friendly rather than car-friendly, you will see a difference. Okay? You don't always have to cater to the automobile. You don't always have to cater to the parking requirements of the automobile. Have you ever worked in a downtown or ever worked with merchants that say they actually have enough parking? Parking is always an issue. All right. So you're not going to compete with the mall parking lots for parking. So let's not even try. All right. Speed. Speed. Your road needs to be a spine, not a border. If you've got traffic going fast across the road, you're not going to go from one store on one side to the other. It's just not going to be feasible. It's too risky. Okay? Speed limits under 25 miles an hour on in shopping areas. 20 to 25 miles an hour, under. Because you want people to be able to cross the street. You want people to be able to go to different places. Main Street should reflect multiple publics that make up a 16-hour day, especially when you come to neighborhood shopping. Especially when you come to neighborhood shopping. That's where our competitive advantage is, the 16-hour day. Right? 6 o'clock in the morning, you've got the construction workers going to work. 8 o'clock, you've got the office crowd. 10 o'clock, you've got people that are at home, parents, older folks coming out. Noon, you have the lunchtime. Okay? 3 o'clock, you've got the office crowd going back out. Right? 9 o'clock, you've got people twisting and shouting. How do you accommodate all of those different multiple publics? How can you have a downtown or a main street or a neighborhood area that caters to the morning coffee and newspaper to the evening shout and dance? Okay? That becomes important. The mall doesn't. The mall will close at 6 o'clock. Then where do you go? You'll go downtown. You'll go to the restaurants. You'll go to places that are open and catering to, the ice cream shops, the coffee shops. Okay? There's been a large move in the US to move government facilities out of Main Street, okay? Especially post offices. You can totally understand the need for a post office to move because it's more convenient for the post office to be at the edge of town, right? But as long as you can, try and save those civic functions. Try and save those civic functions in your downtown. Okay? Those are the people, those are the places where people have to go and meet and chat and talk, and that's what draws them to downtown. If you have to mail a letter, or if you have to send a parcel, and you're going to go onto the strip mall, mail that parcel, go and get it in your car, go there, mail that parcel, come back home, you don't interact. If you went to downtown, you met a friend, said, hey, let's go for coffee. Okay? So these are the meeting places that people like to interact with. Again, don't give predominance to convenience in terms of large businesses or government services. Don't give away to cars. You're creating a space. You're creating a space that's unique, that's different. Restaurants and movie theaters. That's the whole shoppertainment thing, isn't it? We're going from just the mall to having more movies and more restaurants in the malls and large movie theaters with 16 and 17 movie things. So the whole shoppertainment thing, those downtown are important as well, or on Main Street are important as well. Landscaping. Okay. Real estate agents will tell you that if you put up a poster of a parcel with and without landscaping, the value, just the value on a picture, goes up. Okay. Do you want to walk through a downtown where you've got the edge of the shop, your paved pavement, the front of a car? Or would you rather walk down a main street that has trees and benches and pots and things that you can actually use? Okay, so streetscape becomes increasingly important. And again, a lot of these are what makes a place special, what makes a place that somebody wants to go to. Okay? Cleanliness, architecture, culture. All of these things are perception things. All of these things that say, let's go here. There's so much more to do in this downtown. Where do you take your friends? And again, this whole thing is not something that happens overnight. You build and you build in terms of where you are going and how you do it. All right, what's different about neighborhood retail? Carol asked me if I would just concentrate a little bit on neighborhood retail. A lot of what we talk about in terms of downtowns is also very much viable in terms of neighborhood retail. Okay? Even neighborhood retail. You want the convenience, you want the specialty, you want all of those things. You want to know your market. Right? Neighborhood retail must be open when the neighborhood is around. What's the point of having a store that's open while you're at work? Yeah? It's the whole 16-hour day thing. Know your market thing. Okay? Who lives in this community? Where do they work? When do they work? What are the times that people are out on the street? What are the types of things that they like to do? Knowing the market is important. Right? And catering to that. Neighborhood retails near schools and libraries get added foot traffic. You've got to drop your kid off to school, stop by the little grocery store and pick up some muffins. Okay? So the convenience or the tie-in with other neighborhood things that you're doing become important. Neighborhood retail works best when there's strong cohesion amongst cultural ties and no competition. Now, it's a little bit different than downtown because neighborhood retail is a lot smaller than Main Street or downtown retail. Right? It's not going to be possible for you to have those 3 shoe stores in a neighborhood retail. There's just not enough market for those. So one, knowing your market. Okay? And knowing your market is who lives in this neighborhood? Who's within 1 mile of the shopping area? Who comes here? Who lives in your neighborhood? Who belongs there is all going to dictate what it is that you sell. If this is an affluent neighborhood, you can have a wine and cheese store. Okay? But a wine and cheese store ain't going to work in an ethnic neighborhood. Right? So knowing the market, knowing who your customers are becomes important. Retail works best when it focuses upon essentials. Plus, yeah, this is not just a grocery store because its scale is too small for a grocery store to work. But this is like your coffee shop, your newspaper stand, your essential groceries, and they can mail you a letter for you. So that whole neighborhood feel, bringing in the essentials plus aspect of it. Neighborhood stores work best when you can go in and say, listen, I like this particular wine. I'm going to buy at least 2 bottles of this a month. Can you stock it? Okay? So knowing your customer, knowing your retail base is what counts. Retail character must relate to the income group of the neighborhood. Same thing. Knowing your market. Okay? Knowing your market. If this is an elderly neighborhood, your market is different. If this is college students, your market is different. Neighborhood income levels of people make a difference. Neighborhood retail must be designed for easy comfort. That's what makes it a neighborhood, doesn't it? You're looking for a neighborhood feel. Okay? Parking, sit, chat, meet, eat, drink. Get into that kind of a setting. The owners of neighborhood retail stores must be trusted by neighbors. That all goes back to whether you're on time, whether you keep the things that they want, whether you're courteous, whether something breaks and you can go back for service without being yelled at. The person that owns the neighborhood store needs to be part of that neighborhood, become part of that neighborhood. Okay? Neighborhood shops must have should have character. Neighborhood shops that have character have added bonus. Obviously. You don't want just a general store in there. If it's a cute store or something that adds character, something that's local, a local flavor, that makes a difference. And basically, neighborhood retail requires strong commitment from the neighborhood. Okay? So it's almost like a chicken and egg thing. Okay? You're not going to get commitment from the neighborhood if you're not selling the things that neighborhood wants. And you're not going to make profit or make money in your commercial endeavors if the people don't want to come there because what they need is not there. Right? So the whole tie between market demand and market supply is important. And I told Carol I'd only speak for half an hour and open it up. So, doesn't matter what you do, how you do it. There's no one way. There's no right or wrong way. Okay? It takes time. It takes patience. It takes knowing your market. But it's well worth it. The downtown is the core of your community. Your neighborhood, retail, commercial area is the core of your neighborhood. Right? And why is all of that important? Because if your core isn't strong, this is not a place where people want to be. If this is not a place where people want to be, if there's not a neighborhood where people want to be, you don't have any economic standing. Okay? So it goes around the whole big circle and comes back to here's where we need to go. All right, I'm going to stop there and open it up for questions. Yes?
Your comment regarding knowing your market as far as the neighborhood stores, and your also comment about the sharp edges. I just have a question.
Sure.
As far as Grand Rapids going, I would see that a lot of the business districts in the neighborhoods that surround them, the neighborhoods are changing. And so what is your suggestion about that in regards to planning? I mean, if you plan for what's there right now, it's not what's going to be there in 5 years. Do you look to the future, or do you right now? And also with the sharp edges, we keep redefining what our boundaries are downtown. So how do you do with the sharp edges when the downtown is growing?
Okay. One thing again, never be afraid of change and be current with what your market needs are. So yeah, you need to plan for what your neighborhood market is or what your market demand is right now. But you can't just do this once and say, I'm done for the next 10 years. You know, this data comes out annually. If you're working in that neighborhood, you can see changes. Be perceptive to changes in the neighborhood. Okay? If this is turning out to be a different mix of people, start catering to the different mix of people. Right? So it can't be static. Nothing can be static. Even if it's the same store, they change their mix. You look at large retail companies. You know, Brooks Brothers goes from classy button-down cotton shirts to more casual because the market around them is changing. Same thing for neighborhood, and more so for neighborhood, faster at the neighborhood level. Yeah? So one, don't stay static. Either lead the market or follow the market. Okay? You can be a catalyst. You can have the types of shops that people will want to come to this neighborhood for. So you can be a catalyst. You don't have to just respond to the market. Okay? You could have the coolest Korean greengrocer in all of Grand Rapids, and people are going to come there from anywhere and everywhere because it's the only one in the area. So then you're an attractor. Okay? But careful of who you're catering to. In terms of edges, again, you don't have to be static. Don't just grow because you think growth would be, because you have more, you'll get more. Because that's not true. But if you realize that the market demand suggests that you have more, I'd advise you guys to get some good marketing data. Get some good marketing data in terms of supply and demand in your areas. You can do it by radii, you can do it by zip code, any which way. And that will tell you what are people in your area spending money on. And if you realize that a lot of people are spending money on gourmet shopping and you don't have any gourmet food restaurant, or if you don't have any gourmet shop in your area, there's a market demand for that. Okay? So just by adding more doesn't mean, it's not a question of if you build it, they will come. Just adding more doesn't necessarily work. Right? Question there?
Grand Rapids revitalizing their downtown. They also turn in a portion of the district into a Renaissance zone.
Mm-hmm.
In the middle of that Renaissance zone has been your base population of homeless people for over 100 years. You have Milk Trotter, Guiding Light, God's Kitchen, Goodwill, and stores down there. And in the midst of that, you also have a little place called Teeny Bikini Bar and some more upscale shops that want to try and go in right next door to these places. And you made the comment you don't want to have a homeless shelter right next door to an upscale Starbucks. Do you think it will survive or not?
One of them is going to have to to
You're
give
gonna need
way.
$100 million to buy out the homeless.
Yeah. Well, you know, part of it is not necessary. Part of it's also change over time.
Yeah.
Relocating them to a side street or finding a different area within that same neighborhood might work. But it's a hard one. You know, you can't say you want all of those people off the streets and have this very pretty downtown, because they're part of our culture and they're part of our society and they're going to be there.
Exactly, and that's what I see as being part of it. You know, people are going to be there.
Yeah.
And now they're trying to put. It seems like they're trying to push them out because they're doing. He made the goodwill tear down its old facial facade and put up and restore the original sandstone that's there too.
Yeah.
So, Mel Trotter bought a warehouse. The historic committee came in and said, well, you can't revitalize, you know, you have to revitalize this. Well, they had an architect finally come in and an engineer say, this is not worth revitalizing because it's not safe.
Right.
So they're expanding and they're,
You know, there's no silver bullet. There's no easy answer. Each place you need to deal with as and how the situation arises. If everything was ideal, you probably wouldn't want that type of a development there. But, you know, that's all we talk about in gentrification. That's what we talk about on port development. Look at your old industrial areas that are turning into artist lofts. You know, you get a whole new clientele. All of a sudden, that business that's been there for 20 years now is a noise nuisance. But that business was there a hell of a long time before you guys came in. You know? So that dynamic is always going to play into it. And you know, there's no real easy answer. There's no clear answers to, do we stop becoming better because of who we are? Where does it mix? You got to, planning is 70% fact, 30% leap of faith. You know, you got to make that connection. Right.
You went blank earlier. Now I just did.
I tend to have that effect on people.
In reference to what he was talking about, yes, Grand Rapids. You walked in. I don't know if you're familiar with Grand Rapids, but you walked into a bee's nest right here today. Mel Trotter, for instance, the homeless place. The homeless have been pushed out of one place for the arena. They've been pushed out of another place, and they have got an awesome area downtown. And now they're being called blighted, which is the one term that eminent domain has to prove to be taken. Now, they're a wonderful organization. They're great for our city. The homeless will always be with us.
Yeah.
Do you have any terms, words, things that we can use in our fight, in our battle, to help them against these people that are in there just for quick money, because they want their buildings? Any help for us, word-wise?
Social equity. Social justice, social equity, that this is not all planning, especially planning, is not a field where majority voice holds. It's not a field where, you know, the person who speaks the loudest gets it. And it's a hard task.
You said social equity. What does that
But
mean?
social equity is, you know, more social justice for everybody. Just because you're poor doesn't mean you're the bottom of the barrel. You know, because you're going to be here. Where are you going to go? The whole situation of closing all the state mental institutions. You know, where do you put those people? They're going to have to go someplace.
And in regards to what she was saying over here too, as far as downtown encroaching into the neighborhood right now, there's speculation on what we might need in the future. Rip down all these homes, people that have been living 50 years, 5 generations, in order for what speculating might happen.
Yeah.
You know,
Urban renewal in 2000.
hurting so many everywhere. How can you address that?
More education. Trying to show that it's not just cost benefit in a dollar sense. Trying to show that there's cost benefit in a cultural sense, in a social sense, in an environmental sense. Trying to show why. And it's an uphill battle. I'm not going to be able to give you any.
Any help, like in dealing with, for instance, a rich person who has been collecting homes, you know, turns them into rentals, runs them down, and says, hey, look at the neighborhood's bad. Any advice on that?
There are, you can do things in your zoning bylaw. There are things that you can do where you have a demolition bylaw, or you have a take-back bylaw, you have a buyback bylaw, things such as that you can actually work in and enforce rigorously. If your property, yeah, take-backs is most common in terms of signage. Somebody puts up a crappy sign, the neighborhood doesn't like it, it's all this neon, while all the rest of it is nice and historic and good looking. That person's just spent money. That person thinks it's really cool to have the sign.
So demolition bylaw, take back.
So you can take back, you can buy and take back that. So those types of bylaws. Put strong fees for things that are not up to code. You know. And enforce code.
How do we get those instituted? How do we get those enforced? Especially if we may have a director that is not on our side. How do we, is that something that goes through city commission? Is that something that goes through a different route? Or?
Again, I don't have a clear answer for you, but grassroots helps. Build a grassroots momentum to do this. Build enough people that are going to talk about it, that it does become a city issue.
Okay.
So it's not just the poor folk that are talking about it. It's not just the homeless that are talking about it. It's the city that's asking for something.
Okay.
You know, more proactive. Build more networks. There and then there.
Oh, you're from Middletown, Connecticut, right?
No, I'm not.
Oh.
I'm from Amherst, Massachusetts. But
Okay.
go ahead.
In Hartford, Connecticut.
Yes.
Downtown is trying to go through a revitalization. You can see a lot of the same things there that you see in Grand Rapids. How
Yeah.
have they been working in?
It's the same story. Hartford is probably one of the poorest cities in Connecticut, with Bridgeport. Yeah, Hartford's a funny state. It's one of the richest states in the country, but its cities are the poorest cities in the country. The money is all in the suburbs. It's all in the housing. The New York people that work out in the city can't afford to live in the city and come and live at the bases of Connecticut, Stanford, and all of those places. But again, it's the population base. And part of it is not being fixed in our ideas. Part of it is understanding that change is going to happen. Holyoke, Massachusetts, right now is 70% Hispanic. Right? You walk down that and you've got these Irish shops, and that was the original makeup, and you talk to downtown people and they'll say, look what's happened to our downtown. It sucks. I mean, there's loud music, there's so many people, it's like, you know, there's people hanging on the roads, we can't get our customers to come in, stuff like that. You talk to a Hispanic owner of the shop and his view of downtown is totally different. It's like, wow, look. See how downtown's changing. There's people on the street. There's music. You know, so try not. I know it's hard. I mean, if I was walking by a Friendly's and there was a crowd of teenage black guys hanging around there, I'm not sure I would want to go into Friendly's. Okay, that's perception, and everybody has those perceptions and those fears and those things. But understand, look at it from the other point of view too. And do things that are not enforcing. You know, how often do you see signs that say, no skateboarding, no this thing, no this thing? Where do you see a sign that says, skateboarding allowed? This if you don't so you're not making this place friendly for the people, for the kids to hang out in, and then you're grumbling because they're hanging out outside your store. Yeah. So again, it's the whole perception of what's the right market for, you know. I wish I had simple, clear answers for you.
A lot of our neighborhood districts are suffering from a lot of the things you're talking about. But, you know, you talk about, well, what about that little bookstore there or that little chocolate store there? What we seem to be subjected to is what's coming at us. How do we recruit what we want for our districts?
Two parts of it. One, you need to know, firstly, it's not what you want for your district. One, you need to know what is the market in your area. Okay? You need to know the demand. Once you have figures that show you demand, once you know the demand, it's an easier sell to go out to a company that you want to bring in and say, listen, we've got this many dollars flowing out of this neighborhood that are going someplace else. Yeah. And again, when you're starting small, if you're in a small neighborhood, a small community, do the plus thing. just a little chocolate shop might not make it. But the chocolate shop with a fine wine store, with a back room for sitting and reading, that might do it. So knowing the market is one thing.
We seem to have a market, an established market, as an entertainment district.
Mm-hmm.
Our city master plan seems to say, well, we need a mix of uses. That's what we want for neighborhoods. What seems to be coming at us is more alcoholic venues. So, yeah, if you read the district, you'd say, yeah, they want entertainment. Well, that doesn't help walkability. That doesn't project a real safe neighborhood. That involves a lot of parking issues. So, I mean, it flies right in the face of what you say. But it's not what I think is good for the district. You know, it's an overabundance of anything. It's not, 50 banks is our 20 bank or 10 banks isn't going to help us.
All I can say is the market forces will take care of themselves. If you do have that many bars and nothing else, then that's what it's going to be used for till they realize that there's a different market, till they realize there's way too much competition for the same thing, and start to move off. Zoning. How do you stop McDonald's drive-thrus? You can stop drive-thrus in zoning. You can restrict the size of your stores. You can restrict the amount of liquor licenses you give out. Okay? Regulations are powerful when you want to use them. Right.
But it takes the city
yes.
and the city staff to understand those
yes.
issues.
Yes. And the other part of it is, we are a democratic society. If you've zoned this for these types of businesses and they're allowed there, who are we to say, you're the last liquor store that's going to come in? You can't. So if you zone it for mixed use, if you zone it in an area and say only 30% of this area is going to be retail, 40% is going to be commercial, 30% is going to be open space, or something of that sort, you can do that. You can do district plans, you can do neighborhood plans and say, okay, this area we want to develop as our business node. Okay? So once you're at that 40% retail, you're done. Something else needs to come in there. But again, it takes strong leadership, and it takes committed people to want to make that kind of a change.
And how effective have you seen neighborhood associations and business associations in creating change?
Strong neighborhood associations that know.
How effective have you seen them if you have a people, since there was no association, but then an association was developed by the neighbors and businesses? Have they been very effective tools?
Yeah, if you've got it's all about commitment. It's more about commitment than getting somebody from the outside to just be there as a staffer. If you've got the commitment from the businesses, you've got the commitment from the neighborhood, you're doing what the neighborhood wants to do, and you're building capacity.
So if you got a problem, start an association.
If you have a problem starting an association, that means
If you have a problem in your neighborhood and you don't have an association, so should you start one?
Well, it depends on what it is you're going to be doing. You don't necessarily want a neighborhood association if your problem is traffic control.
That's what I'm saying, though.
But
If you have a problem with all the businesses that are coming in, you have a venue that you don't like that is all liquor stores or something like that, organize
yes,
yourself and
yes, yes. Again, there's not one formula. Just because you have a business association in the district doesn't mean that it's going to work. There are only some things that this business association can do. If your regulations allow for those stores, if you in your master plan or you in your plans have allowed for those things to happen, your regulation says this can happen. Okay? So look at it from both sides of the equation. Yes, sir.
Well, in my experience, I'm from Kalamazoo. Neighborhood associations typically are anti-growth, anti-change. They have nothing to do with anything except what will preserve the property values that are already there. the neighborhood associations are kind of like really a brake on change. What do you suggest can help overcome that attitude? Give people some confidence that that change is going to allow their property values to be preserved rather than to slowly deteriorate from just inaction and slow rot.
Well, I'll go back to educating the public. For one, if your neighborhood association doesn't have the buy-in from the neighborhood itself, then that neighborhood association is not going to be effective at all.
Well, usually it does have.
If it has the buy-in, then you need to be able to show that other places that have done things differently, that have worked. If you have a facade improvements program, if you have a neighborhood that's got some sort of a retail mix in it and is doing well, bring in examples. Bring in examples from other places that you can introduce. And again, you know, these are people that are living in these communities. If they want to keep their area totally residential, that's their choice. They bought into that area to be totally residential. So who is in the power play? Who's in the power position? It should be the people that live there. It should be the neighborhood. The association ought to be an implementation arm. The association ought to be something that can guide, foster, create different things, not force. And any change, any type of change, meets resistance. So don't expect it to happen overnight. Start slowly. You know, first just get them excited, interested in what you're doing.
Can I interrupt you for 1 minute, Z?
Yes.
Z has agreed to stay until 2 o'clock to answer questions as we
I have?
But yes, you did. You might not remember. But I see some people have to leave, and I just want to encourage everybody to please fill out the evaluation form. If you don't have one, let me know, and I'll get you one. We need this like for our records. It's a very bureaucratic thing, but if you could take a few minutes to fill it out.
Yeah, she didn't tell me I was going to be tested on
This
this.
is a test against me. Yeah, thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
As you know, a lot of this stuff is pretty complicated in downtown or neighborhood business districts. A whole bunch of the things like sharp edges and stop leaking outside the main retail corridors, or coordinating hours. I mean, if every shop is owned by someone else and every building is owned by even someone different, and keeping things up and you know, clean and safe, they're very complicated issues. And you mentioned that mall shoppership is declining, which is in my mind a wonderful thing. However, I see the rise of the lifestyle center being
The Lifestyle Center
competitor
and catalog.
downtowns and neighborhood business areas. Any
What's that exactly?
A lifestyle center is more of an open mall that's got shops and restaurants and movie theaters and, you know, the whole little everything you want in a single package kind of a thing.
new fake downtown?
Yeah, it's a new, perfectly put. Perfectly put. It's a new fake downtown that they're trying to create. Well, look at what works in a lifestyle center. Look at why they're trying to create the same ambiance as there is in a downtown. Right? And then maybe you have, it just might be peer pressure. A neighborhood association or a business association that just says, you know, this is a gentleman's agreement. We will all stay open till 6 o'clock because it's good for us. You know, yeah, especially in neighborhoods. You know, 6 o'clock, everyone's still at work. Yeah. What makes a mall work is the organizational part of it.
It's clean.
It's clean.
It's organized.
And, you know, and those things are things that you can do at the neighborhood scale. You don't even have to form something like a major bid. A bid is an improvement, a business improvement district or something of that sort. It could just be a really strong merchants association that comes together and says, we're going to do this. You know, you can't, again, you can't force somebody to say, no, you have to stay open till 8. I need to go bowling at 6, I'm out. But if you start working towards it, if you start giving incentives, if you start putting a little bit more peer pressure from people next to you, everyone wants to be a good neighbor.
Not everyone.
It's what it does. The peer pressure and neighborhood voice does amazing things.
Can you speak a little bit to business improvement districts and tax captures, and if you think that they're...
Business improvement districts are a real good way of improving a district if you've got buy-in from the district. Okay, because it's not raising property taxes. City doesn't have to put in any of its money into it. It's almost a pay-as-you-go. It's the business people investing in what they think is important. So again, business districts work great when you have good buy-in from that neighborhood. Again, they don't have to be. It doesn't have to be so formal. It can be just a good network of people working together.
Which is your business people, but it's really property owners are bid.
I'm sorry, come again?
You said business owners, but that's if they're the property owner too.
That's
It's
true.
the property owner that pays for the bid.
That's true. That's true. And again, there's a big disconnect. There is a disconnect between property owner and merchant. But there are different formulas. You know, part of the formula can be assessment. Part of the formula can be sales tax. Even in bids, you know, there are different ways that you can do it, and maybe the person that's renting will want to invest in it. And maybe if they don't invest in it, and that's why it doesn't always have to be a formal mechanism. If you say, you know, let's all just get together and make sure that all our storefronts are clean, that we don't have Christmas decorations in July. You know, those are like simple things that are up to the people to take a hold of and make a difference. So, yeah, there are formal mechanisms. A bid is usually for a particular project. It is usually bounded in terms of time limits. A downtown association is indefinite. You know, that's an association that wants to work with the merchants. What's important today might not be important tomorrow. What's important during Christmas time might not be important in July. And it moves on. So again, it's a matter of commitment. It really is, from all sides. And I know that's not an easy answer. Yes, ma'am.
We were talking about neighborhood retail and how it addresses needs of the residents who live there. I'm curious if you think that a neighborhood business district can also be a destination.
Absolutely.
Outside, and can you do both?
Absolutely. Absolutely. To be a destination, you really do have to be something really special. To be a destination, you have to be something unique, and you have to build over time. There needs to be consistency. When I go there, I know what I'm going to get, and I'm going to get it every time. I can go there, and I know it's going to be open. All of those other factors do matter and do count in. But the best types of attractors, the best types of places is what comes out of the neighborhood demand. So it's not only just the local demand, but then you're attracting people from the outside. So your local base becomes your basic. Okay? If I have a large amount of Polish people in my neighborhood, and I start my Polish deli, I'm going to pass that word. Now, people somewhere else are going to come to know that I have this really cool place in this neighborhood. They're going to drive to there. But you need a base. You need a base to build on. Okay? So I wouldn't necessarily want to put something totally different in a neighborhood that doesn't support it at all. So first building block, build on your neighborhood strengths. Build on your neighborhood market. Okay? And then see what's really special. What are the things that are really special about this that you can escalate? And make that the attractor. Absolutely. You can do both, absolutely. And much like economic base theory, you want the outside money coming in. You know, you want the outside money coming in, so. Anybody else? All right, thank you very much for having me.